Hello, everybody, and welcome back to F1 Unhinged, the unapologetic F1 podcast. As always, I'm Kalen.
I'm
As
Tyler.
most of you know me, some of you know me as Josh, whichever.
Yeah, you. Wow. Oof. Well, I'm Tyler.
Tiredness is how we're going about this. It has been a long week in the lives of both the people at F1 Unhinged.
Yes.
We are truly unhinged right now. It has been a long, tiring week. Our off season is rough at the start.
Would you say you're worse than you were Sunday for the Grand Prix versus now?
Well, considering I live in one of the areas that has just been buried in snow, yes.
Same. Yeah,
yes.
Same.
Yes.
I'm going stir crazy.
Yeah, it's... I was not expecting the second wave of snow. I thought when it was done Saturday night, Sunday morning, that we were done, and that was it. And then I woke up this morning and went outside my apartment building, and it was a fucking whiteout. And I was out of a lot of essential things that I needed, and it was not a fun journey to get those things.
No, and you had to walk too, which is even worse.
Yeah. Well, and the store that I normally go to that's directly behind my apartment is going out of business and closing in a couple days. So I went in there and they only had about a fifth of their store left.
Wait, are you talking about the Big Bird?
The Roses behind me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
really?
They're going out of business, and I walked in, and there's like a fifth of the shelving still out, and just didn't have 90% of the stuff that I needed. I'm currently using wet wipes as paper towels until the snow thaws enough for me to actually get to another store. So
you're living van life in an apartment.
I was using toilet paper as paper towels, and then one of my cats decided it was a play toy, and I woke up with my place TP'd from the inside. So that was...
That's never
many
fun.
whiteouts in my day, apparently. The outside covered in snow, the inside covered in toilet paper. None of which I expected to wake up to.
That is fair. That is completely fair. I wanted to kind of take a moment to address the lack of a audio version of our episode last week. That is because we live streamed the final GP of the season on Twitch and here. But because it was 8 o'clock in the morning, both Josh and I had very little sleep under our belts, and there was so much dead white space in the episode, it didn't make sense to upload it as an audio-only podcast. So, if you want to get our honest, true, live to the race reactions, you can go see it on our YouTube channel. That has been uploaded there since Wednesday, and we live streamed it on Twitch as we do with every episode. But I think the Twitch VOD, like video on demand thing, is only like 7 days at most, and so we uploaded it to YouTube to make sure that it was always there. But we didn't feel that it was up to snuff with the quality that we want to put out in terms of a podcast episode for audio to make it an audio version. So we weren't on podcasting platforms last week, but it's just because we didn't want you to drive and have 10 minutes of silence in between takes. Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting race. So
it wasn't an exciting race, and we weren't.
we were
I
dead.
think we just all kept waiting for something to happen, and it just never did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was weird for the championship to end so lamely. it was just quiet, and I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. The most I think the most exciting part of that race was Piastri's outside turn over Norris, and then the Norris and Shinoda penalty debacle that happened. I think
Yeah.
those were the only two like really like pinpointable moments within that race. At least that was televised. So
In my Red Bull colored glasses, I'm still a little annoyed by Yuki somehow getting the penalty there.
I can see it. I mean,
Only because he didn't get. We talked about this a bit, but he didn't get a black and white flag for Weave. There was no warning. It was just a penalty, and it's like I've never seen a penalty for one case of weaving. Normally, even the couple times that we've seen it this year, it's been because it's been multiple laps, and finally the stewards are like, okay, you're being a little ridiculous. That was one lap on one straight. And
yeah.
It kind of felt like an excuse to not intervene in the championship. And I blame Mercedes.
Really?
Yeah. Because if race directors weren't afraid of making calls that change a championship and then getting fired because of the outrage from another team, maybe they were more inclined to give the right penalty. But we know how much power McLaren has. They have about a massive amount of power within the FIA, the same way that Mercedes used to. And I think that played a little bit into it.
That's fair. Yeah.
Because
different take. Yeah.
Look at what happened to Michael Massey's career.
Yeah.
And I hate to bring up Abu Dhabi 2021 again, but that will always infuriate me, the reaction afterwards. Just because I think the part that always gets left out in that was the meeting that was had with the teams before that race, when Mercedes brought their lawyer because they were convinced Max was just going to wreck Lewis out to win. So they were trying to find a way to get Max stripped of the championship if he just took Lewis out, which is hilarious. But Toto's a bitch, so what do you expect? Anyway, away from my personal feelings on that, but there was the conversation with the teams before the race about both teams asking if it's at all possible they want the race to finish under green flag. And then they did whatever was possible to finish a race under a green flag. And Toto's, that's so not right. And all angry when it's like, come on, shoe was on the other foot.
You wouldn't have been saying the same thing.
You're the same dude who was asking for a safety car not to be released earlier in the race because it would hurt you when there was an abandoned car on the track. So shut the fuck up. But I feel like the general... Let's be real. If you make the ruling against the British driver on the team that claims they're British against Red Bull, that cost him the championship, do you really think you're going to have a job on Monday?
No.
Now, granted,
we could dive into the politics of it.
Now, granted, I do want to stipulate, I don't think that actually had any bearing on who won the championship.
No.
Because the only person that would have been affected by that outcome is Piastri, who would have gained a place that he would have then been asked to give up so that Lando still won the championship.
Yeah.
So it didn't have any interference on the championship either way. Please let me be clear.
It's principle.
It is not me as a Red Bull fan saying, "Oh, we would have won the championship if." Yeah, no. Max was going to lose that title regardless.
Yeah.
No matter if that penalty is applied, Max
it would have
still losing the title.
It would have taken Norris finishing outside of P3 or DNFing.
Yeah.
Which
there was no car in fourth place close enough to take that spot.
No. And
because really you would have needed the car in fifth place more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. And
you would need him far enough down to where Piastri couldn't drop down and give him that place. So
and there's like we've talked at length over the season about Norris's consistency during the season. But this is single-handedly the most important race he's ever raced his entire life. There unless somebody took him out, I don't think he would have DNF'd or finished less than P3.
Okay.
To be completely honest.
He did a smart race. I think he was stupid in his overtake of Tsunoda, and it probably should have warranted a penalty. But I also don't think it made a difference.
Yeah.
And I think Tsunoda, showing his inability to keep that car behind him, proved exactly why he's not working at Red Bull. You had one job.
I mean, he's technically still working at Red Bull. He's a reserve driver now.
Yeah, ask Teo Pourchaire how that's going.
I mean, as it stands, he's a reserve driver. So, technically, he's still on Red Bull's payroll.
He is. Yes, he's still on their payroll. He won't touch one of their F1 cars if it's not in a simulator.
That is very true. He is not going to go out for FP1 sessions, that's for sure.
Yeah. So he is a reserve for, everything goes wrong, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's the only way Yuki touches a car again. Which,
and they also have,
with Lindblad's age and his habit of wrecking into people, he could end up in one of those cars by the end of the year.
It wouldn't be Red Bull though; it'd be Racing Bulls.
Well, I don't still love a car.
Yeah. Let's pivot the transition of this conversation to Hadjar being in the Red Bull seat. How do you think 2026 plays out for Hadjar in that seat, given that there's no helmet Marco and there's no Christian Horner?
I don't think either of that matters. I think it not being a ground effect car matters.
Well, I think it matters. Here's
why I don't think it matters. Because I think he's going to be better than the last two Red Bull drivers just based on the car.
I mean, that's fair, 100%. But I'm talking more about Red Bull's mentality. You haven't performed in 2 races, we're going to boot you. Like,
I think
without Marco and without Horner, and with Mekis being at the helm, do you think that mentality of underperforming within a finite amount of races, given new regulations, is going to be a problem in 2026?
Okay, here's why that's a unfair thing to ask. Because they have promoted the best parts of their talent group. There is
and also demoted
currently. Well, but there is not currently. Maybe Nicholas Soloff, maybe in their academy right now that is knocking on the door. Like I just really don't see anyone in the academy who's like, I'm next. That was the thing about Lindblad. Lindblad was next. Everyone knew he was next. regardless of his performances in F2. All he had to show was that he had pace. And when he did the very rare thing in F2 with their reverse grid sprint race format, when he took the double in Silverstone as a rookie, as that was impressive. That race alone could have gotten him the job. You pull the double in F2 as a teenage rookie, that doesn't happen very often at all. And that performance alone, even with his subpar end to the season, proved that he had the one thing that they care about: pace. And Soloff kind of has pace, but I don't know. I think the lack of other options might get these guys a little bit more time. And I also think the Lawson situation was a little tough because you had a power struggle from within on who got that seat. And the side that wanted Lawson won out, but not convincingly. So I think when Lawson had a bad start to the season, the people who didn't want him in that seat to begin with
got more leverage.
See. And then they put Yuki, and it's like, oh, it's all of us.
It lives rent-free in my head, wondering how the second seat at Red Bull would have turned out if they would have just stuck with Lawson.
Not much different than Lando. That car was a problem.
The car was a problem. But then they kind of made the problem worse for themselves.
Yeah, because they didn't trust what the second driver felt.
Exactly. But also, not only that part, but then they demoted Lawson, which has a massive repercussion in terms of, confidence in that driver. And we saw that take place. It took him more than a handful of races to actually get back up to snuff. And I will say, Lawson, given that he was demoted, he took that Racing Bulls car really well. He did really great things with that car. Hadjar obviously outperformed him in that car, but Hadjar had the whole season in that car. Red Bull shot themselves in the foot more than once because not only did they demote a driver, but then they brought up a driver that had to get up to snuff with a car at the beginning of the season. Well, into the season, so it wasn't even testing. Like, there was no, you've tested this car, it's still a shitbox, but you've tested it and you've driven it. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like Lawson would have had more points for Red Bull as a second driver than Yuki did, for sure, if he had the ability to stay the whole season.
My feelings on it are kind of weird because they almost go beyond that, to where it's like, I don't think Red Bull could have been a successful organization without firing a lot of people. Because, and this is something that when it happened, before we had a podcast, before any of that, when it first happened, when Dietrich Mateschitz died.
Yep. I remember that day.
My initial thought was, this could be the thing to kill Red Bull. Because they existed in a way that no corporate company does. Where there was a branch of that company that had all the money, resources, and autonomy that it wanted, completely unchecked. Because that's how Dietrich wanted it. And there was no way that a board that was taking over that company was going to want that to stand. And that was also at the time Christian was going through all of the allegations and all that stuff. And it was a very rough time at Red Bull. They had the cost cap violation thing that I remember Sky having to issue apologies because when Dietrich passed at Coda, it was the Coda weekend, and Red Bull gathered their team and rushed to their their hospitality area and basically shut the doors with everybody inside. Sky erroneously said that they must have got the results of their cost cap, and that's why everybody looks so down and then there was a commercial break and they came back and was like, oh, actually we have to issue an apology. It turns out somebody died. And I don't think people really appreciate how much Dietrich was just different. He was hands off. He had two people that he trusted implicitly and would not listen to anything against them. And it was Horner and Marco, who hated each other. But
True.
they were great equal and opposites as long as Dietrich was there to police it. Because Christian knew how to build a business and Marco knew how to be ruthless with acquiring talent. And they were both great at what they did. But as soon as you get rid of the piece in the middle that holds everything in check, chaos. And it wasn't long after that all the Christian stuff started leaking out. And you could tell Christian was trying to take control and Helmut was trying to take control. And there were entire camps behind both. And neither of them won. They're both gone.
Yeah. With quite immediate effect. Like, Helmut Marko, almost less than 24 hours after that race, was like, yeah, I'm out. But we don't know if he resigned or if he was fired. I'm sure
we know now because he came out in Dutch press just trashing Red Bull and Christian Horner because
at a failed attempt, I would say, more so.
Yeah.
It looks desperate. It looks desperate as fuck.
He had to have the last word. The last word of him walking away harmoniously was never going to work for Helmut's ego. He had to let it be known he was forced out and that the people who are in control are idiots. And
let it be known that I've not ever been a Helmut Marko fan. There's been a few episodes, you can go back in the catalog, where I've drug him less than I dragged George Russell, because I drag George Russell a lot. But I don't like Helmut Marko at all, to be completely honest.
I can respect what Marko built and helped build.
I just don't like how much he talks.
But he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, he talks nonsensical bullshit all the time, and I think it's
he's
infuriating.
Gotten to the point where he's gotten too old for his usefulness.
We could say the same about a few other things in the United States, but yeah.
But I just feel like the era of what he is gone.
Yeah,
and things don't work the same.
I hope Seb, because do you remember earlier this year when it was speculated Seb was going to school again to, take Helmut's job and all of that stuff? I really hope Red Bull gives Seb that opportunity to run the junior programs, because I think that would be amazing. And for the listeners that might be new, I get a lot of DMs to my personal page. For some reason, you can just message the podcast page if you want to, about like different nuances in F1 and stuff like that. So we use a lot of terminology and lingo that might not be beneficial to new F1 viewers, which honestly there's probably going to be a fuck ton of them given Apple TV's purchase of rights. So Sebastian Vettel, one of the most legendary drivers in my opinion. I love Seb. he was slated to take Helmut Marko's position at Red Bull when Helmut Marko eventually retired. In this case, I don't think it was a retirement as much as a forced retirement or forced resignation. I hope Red Bull gives Sebastian Vettel the opportunity to have, if not head the junior program, have some type of involvement within Red Bull's organization working with that junior program. I think Seb would be the pinnacle for that.
It needs to be someone like him. It has to be.
Well, because there's no other person like Seb.
Well, I think he offers some of what Dietrich and Helmut built, but with the common sense and understanding of a new era.
And a younger brain. And that's not, I'm not saying that nefariously.
Well, and I think a more even-tempered personality, to where I think Seb, to a point, believes in some of the cutthroatness of Red Bull.
Yeah,
because he's never been one of the ones who is overly critical of some of Red Bull's quick moves. So, and look, I know I'm out on a limb in the F1 community, but that's a part of Red Bull's operation I've never minded. I like the mind state of, if you're not good enough to win a race, you're not good enough to race here. I believe in that mind state.
Yes, but now what do they have in their junior academy? They promoted their best junior driver to a Racing Bull seat. What do they have in their academy?
They'll refresh because they that's what they do. The F1 grid is filled with the Red Bull Academy, or people who have driven for Red Bull.
That is true. Pierre Gasly is one of them.
Well, and now you have Perez coming back, who, while not in the academy, drove for Red Bull. You have so many drivers involved in F1 who have driven for Red Bull at some point. One of the Red Bull teams, or been a part of Red Bull's academy. And I mean, if you look in other racing series, Nick DeVries, top of Formula E. And before him, it was...
Wait. Backtrack. Nick DeVries? Like the same Nick DeVries? Is top of Formula E?
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't he the champion last year?
There's... What? What? The same Nick DeVries that we trashed? Like, obviously non-maliciously, but, like... What?
Oh, correction. He won the 2021 Formula E.
So that was before he was in Formula One. Because it was 2022, 2023 that he was at Racing Bulls.
Yeah.
Look at me with my F1 knowledge. Let's go. Yeah, wow. I mean, still though, like you look at WEC, right?
Well, that's also why I bring Nick DeVries up, because he's also a WEC driver.
Well, you got to think WEC is, for those that don't know, WEC is World Endurance Championships. There are a lot of former Formula One drivers that are now WEC drivers. You got I think Mick Schumacher just scored an Indy racing seat, but he was a WEC driver.
Well, I mean, just look at Toyota's. So Toyota, their hypercar team, has two cars. One of the cars has Nick DeVries as one of the three drivers. The other car has Brendan Hartley and Sebastian Buemi.
Which are all Red Bull
three
drivers.
Of the six drivers for Toyota's hypercar team are Red Bull Academy guys. Buemi, who is still to this day sponsored by Red Bull.
I want to know where they get that money from. Are they just printing their own money? Because, like, you got to think,
sell
just outside of
cans of Red Bull a year, and that's how.
Well, but you got to think, it's not just Formula One, which Formula One takes billions of dollars a year to do.
Yeah, but think about how much money they make from everything else.
That is fair.
Some extremely successful football teams. They have a successful hockey team.
They also have like extreme sports teams, like sponsorships for snowboarding, skiing, free base jumping, like you name it.
They have at least 3 teams in MotoGP.
Really? In MotoGP?
Yeah, including the factory KTM team. Unless something's changed for this season. I haven't looked at this season yet fully, admittedly. I haven't looked into the upcoming season of how that's going to change, but I know the rookie series for motorcycles is sponsored by Red Bull. They're heavily in the motorcycle scene. They're heavily in the endurance racing scene. If it's extreme, Red Bull's involved. The thing that Red Bull does that most companies don't is Red Bull sees that stuff as their marketing budget. So rather than all these commercials and adverts and things like that, Red Bull just sponsor things. And occasionally do crazy things like have somebody ski from Everest or drop somebody from space and record it and make a ton of money on YouTube and other platforms. I mean, let's not forget the success of the GoPro is basically thanks to Red Bull. When Red Bull dropped Felix Baumgartner from space wearing a GoPro.
Yeah. Well, they also just had a couple of weeks ago, they sponsored a skier, which I'm heavily involved in the outdoors industry. That's my heart and soul outside of F1, where the skier was the first to summit and then ski the entirety down Everest.
All the way to base camp. That stuff.
All the way to base camp.
Crazy. Oh, that was a watch. That was an incredible watch.
It was insane. And because for me, I'm very aware of Everest. Like, I can tell you how tall it is.
And the fact that that's a multiple day ski journey. Like, Everest is so big, you can't ski Everest in a day.
Yeah, it's 29,000 something feet. Like, it's insane. But also, you got to think, Everest is the tallest point on planet Earth. At a certain point, you reach what they call the death zone, and that's where you have a third of the oxygen. You can only survive for 24 hours in that zone.
And it's important to mention that he did this without.
Yeah, he didn't do it with supplemental oxygen. Yeah, most people that summit Everest use supplemental oxygen, and this dude did not use supplemental oxygen. He actually was in the death zone for
the help of oxygen.
Yeah, he was in the death zone for 25 hours, which is an hour more than what you're supposed to be.
I don't know how many of our viewers have been skiing or even snowboarding for that fact, but it's not as simple as like, oh, we're just going to slide down here. It takes a tremendous amount of physical effort.
Well, there's that, but also you got the Kimbu Ice Falls, which change every hour.
But just talking about physical exertion.
Oh, yeah.
Just that. God. So doing that in the death zone without supplemental oxygen is nuts. And it's not like, oh, you're below the death zone, you can breathe fine now. No,
you still only have a fraction of the oxygen available. Yeah.
Even base camp, you don't have normal oxygen level.
No, you have to acclimatize for I think it's like 6 weeks. You have to get to not to go into the nitty gritty.
Extreme altitude sickness.
To not go into the nitty gritty of all of it, because I have a separate podcast to do all of that stuff. Basically, you'd have to, if you're a normal person, you'd have to arrive at Everest Base Camp 6 weeks before, attempting to summit Everest in order to acclimatize. So 6 weeks is a month and a half. That's how long it takes for you to acclimatize to that type of oxygen. Base camp is above 14,000 feet. To put it in perspective, you and I, Josh, we are at 1,180 feet of elevation above sea level. So 1,180 feet above sea level. That's 14 times more than what we are sitting at just base camp. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and that's where you start your journey.
Yeah, that's well. You have a 2-week hike into base camp still, but
nobody even considers your summit started. Like your journey doesn't start till base camp mentally,
and that's not even
mind.
And that's not even the start
to get to base camp.
Yeah,
if you're not one of the people who can afford to fly in, it's a bitch.
Yeah, it's a 2-week hike into base camp, and then 6 weeks of acclimatization, and then you have, I think, like 1.5 to 2 miles before you actually reach the base of Everest, and then you start your ascent, which is 29,000 plus feet.
Yeah, and usually you're given a very small window of when you're allowed to climb. Some years it can be a couple days.
Some days it could be 1 day.
Yeah.
Some years it could be 1 day.
There is a famous thing from a couple years back of the climber who was attempting to hit all 14 peaks in a certain time frame. The Everest window that year was only 2 days. And
that was
he took a picture of a traffic jam on the top of Everest of everyone trying to climb because there were only 2 days of weather-approved climbing for the whole
There's 400
season.
people.
So everyone who wanted to summit had to summit at the same time.
Yep. And that's, well, you gotta, there's one thing that most people don't realize is there's two paths to Everest. There's the south side, which is what most people climb. It's the Tibetan side of Everest. That's where you see that massive line of 400 people. And then there's the north side, which is on China, because the Everest is basically divided in the center of it at the peak with a border. So half is Tibet, half is China. The north side of the summit is a lot harder to get to.
I'm just loving how fucking way off course we got.
Yeah, we need to stop me because I will talk for the next 3 hours about this. This is why I started another podcast.
Well, it's funny because we both have this hyper fixation on mountains. Like I watch a lot of climbing documentaries and mountains. Like I love mountains. And
the thing for me is most of the people that know me don't know me for Formula One. They know me for the things that I do outside, hiking, climbing, all of that stuff. Like outside the outdoors industry, that's my bread and butter. That's my heart and passion. F1 is, I wouldn't say secondary, but it's not the first passion for me. And so, yeah, we need to shut me up because I will talk forever.
Welcome to the postseason, everyone, where we talk about climbing mountains.
So, all right. So going into 2026, we have new regs, right? You had a hot take. You had a spicy moment that you wouldn't tell me about. So lead into that and then give me that spicy moment because I've been dying to hear it.
So for those of us who have been around enough to remember when the regs came in where Mercedes dominated, that was the last time we had a big regulation shift that was based pure where the cars became engine dependent, which, you know, Red Bull routinely would build the best chassis and would be good at like 3 tracks on the calendar every year. You knew, this could be a Red Bull win. And the rest of the races were Mercedes, and that 1 year that Ferrari built Vettel a good car for half the year until they got caught cheating. Figures. But all that mattered was the engine. If you built a good engine, you were going to win most of the races. That is what this new regulation set looks like. The ground effect is gone. Active aero means that aero really doesn't have much of an effect anymore.
No.
You need to build a solid, consistent platform, but it's all in the engine.
There's no more DRS.
And if it's all in the engine, I think we're going to have a surprise champion this year.
Pre-show, I said Haas jokingly, and it's not Haas. I can tell you that.
No. It's not Haas because Cadillac will be... I'll give you another hot take. Cadillac's going to outperform Haas next year.
Oh, for sure. 100%. So will Audi. Easily.
But I think we're going to have a 3-time world champion next year. I think Fernando Alonso is going to win the title.
An Aston Martin, really?
Because what does Aston Martin get next year?
They get Honda. That's actually not as spicy as I thought it was going to be. That's like the hot sauce that says it's hot that'll kind of disappoint you. I was expecting to be way more spicy, like Alpine or some shit. No, I mean, you pose a good point.
No, because Alpine still have to build a car, and there's a bunch of people who will have Mercedes, because Alpine will have a Mercedes engine next year. There's going to be a bunch of people with Mercedes engines who can build a better car than Alpine.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to have a Honda engine.
And Nui, who's also worked with Honda engines.
Exclusively, pretty much, on these new regs. He's barely been involved in the old car. So you give Nui Honda, which he had already been working with, and a new rule book, and a car that he didn't have to care about last year because they were out of it, so he had time.
Do you think that's why Fernando? Do you think that's why Fernando didn't retire after this season?
Well, Fernando said why. He's going to stay for a year if he has a competitive car. He'll stay for 2 if the car's not competitive.
But that's PR speak.
No, because Fernando is pretty on with what he says. He has never been one to PR it. And he's left F1 before. But, like, if Fernando can get a 3rd title, maybe he stays for a 4th. Maybe he's just like, fuck it, I'm good. I'm going to go endurance race with Max. But I have a sneaky feeling that they've been way too quiet.
Yeah,
Aston Martin has been really, really quiet. I haven't heard Lawrence Stroll shut up for this long since he got in F1.
That's true. Actually, there's been literally no coverage of Lawrence Stroll this season. 0.
And that's scary to me because I think Aston knows something and they don't want to let on. I think they're being quiet because they know they did something. And they don't want other people to know that they did something. I think Aston found something. And Red Bull didn't have issues with their engine power. It was the car that let them down this year, not the engine. And while the Red Bull fan of me wants to believe that the Red Bull engine's going to come out and be this incredible thing, there is also a very large part of me that is extremely nervous about that. Building a new engine with a new engine partner for a new set of regulations while changing half your team. That could go amazing, or it could go horrible. But Honda's more of a known quality, especially dealing with the electronics. And I just have this belief that I think if they don't get in their own way, and there is a caveat to this. They have to do what Red Bull did with Honda and not what McLaren did with Honda. Because the reason why McLaren Honda failed was McLaren tried to keep a lot of information to themselves and wouldn't share with Honda. So Honda was told to build a thing to a specification, but they weren't given any of the access to any of the McLaren documents and the reasons why. When Red Bull started working with Honda, they integrated them as part of the team. So everything Red Bull had, Honda had. They had all the IP information they need. You need Aston to do that. And with Newey there, I'm convinced that's the way that it would work, because it's quite apparent with the shakeup that they just did. That's Newey's show.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, with Newey running the show? Oof.
Yeah, he's not just behind the scenes anymore. He's team principal.
Yeah, he's the guy. And yeah, I just have one of those feelings, man. This could be Aston Martin's year to fuck up. Like, the ball is in their court. They should. I'll put it this way. If you were to give me a blank slate with no team names and just the circumstances starting out next year, Aston Martin is the team that should be the best. You have a proven engine partner, a world champion driver, and the best designer possibly in the history of motorsports.
Yeah.
And you had a shit ton of time to work on the car because you gave up really early on your car for last year.
Also true.
And your biggest technical mind wasn't even involved in that car pretty much any of the year. He was hired to focus on the new rules.
I have a spicy take for you.
I wonder if it was my backup take.
No, I guarantee you it's completely unrelated. Actually,
We'll see.
We haven't seen Lance Stroll be Lance Stroll as often this season, and I have to give Lance Stroll a little golf clap here because I haven't really shit on him that much this season. Last season, I was shitting all over him, but he was also being a complete idiot. This season, I haven't seen Lance Stroll do what I would consider to be a quote-unquote Lance Stroll. And that's big. If he can continue...
Most of his incidents have just kind of been luck. Like Gabby taking him out in Brazil.
Yeah. Like,
and
he cleaned it up.
His qualifying's been bad, but that car's been bad.
Yeah, the car is shit. But I'm not talking about the car. I'm talking about specifically the driver, Lance Stroll. He hasn't given me many reasons this season to shit on him. I love that.
I honestly think he needs to do the rally stuff more in the offseason. Because it seems doing that kind of reminded... I really think F1 drivers need stuff like that.
Yeah, they need outside of F1 stuff.
Well, because I think people forget when a driver's at the back of the grid in F1, they're still probably some of the best drivers in the world. We were just talking about Nick DeVries. He's a successful driver outside of F1. He's won races in WEC. He's won a championship in Formula E. he nearly won the championship 2 years ago in WEC. You were
True.
talking about Brent, and as we talked about Hartley, DaCosta, Buemi, who is a multiple-time champion in several things, including with Hartley winning Le Mans multiple times and winning WEC overall multiple times. I think people forget F1 drivers are some of the best drivers on the planet. And it's until they step out of their realm and go compete in other things and they show their true quality that you realize, like, oh, these guys are that good. Whether, obviously with all the stuff with Max at the Nürburgring this year. But I honestly feel like there's a couple of drivers on the grid who could do what Max did. Maybe not with as much authority, but let's not forget, Lewis Hamilton went to test MotoGP bikes with Rossi and impressed people with his times there.
Yeah.
These drivers are incredible. And I think doing stuff like Stroll going off and doing some rallying, I think helps reiterate to themselves, like, oh no, I am that good. I'm not a back of the pack driver. I'm just in a crap car in a series that the car matters more than anything.
Yeah.
All right, I'm still that dude. And then you get that. Mick Schumacher with some of his success in endurance racing and now going to Indy. Marcus Ericsson won the Indy 500 and he was not very highly looked upon in F1. He was always in back marker teams. You see these guys having a lot of success outside of F1. And I think that's when you realize, like, oh, F1 really is like where the best drivers in the world are most of the time. There are occasions where that's not the case. But I think the last couple of years of drivers doing stuff outside of F1 really shows. Like, Kevin Magnussen is a regular in the endurance series.
He's crushing it.
Yeah, doing a really good job with BMW. Romain Grosjean was the only bright spot in Lamborghini's horrid attempt at building a hypercar. He's the only one who led a lap in any race, and that was an IMSA race. And led for quite a bit of that race for a while. You're talking about guys who are really good at what they do, even when they're a little bit older.
Yeah.
And I think someone like a Lance Stroll, who was going through a really, really rough point in his career, because everyone was shitting on Lance Stroll and everything he did. And it was getting to him on the track, you could tell. And at points this year, you could tell some of it's been getting to him, how bad the car got towards the end. But I think having those experiences in the offseason reminded him, especially for a guy like that, to remind himself, like, oh no, I did have some talent here. It wasn't just all my dad. Because the thing I always defend Lance Stroll for is people forget that he won championships. Yes, his dad's money got him to F1. But he also won. He won things to get there. Yes, he got some of the best cars and best equipment. But there's a lot of guys who go into good cars in Formula 2 and suck. There's a lot of guys who go into good cars in Formula 3 and suck. He didn't. He was good.
Well. I thought that was going to happen. Yeah, that was a rough end to the podcast. But looks like Josh had some internet issues, and so we'll end it here. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. This has been F1 Unhinged. I'm Tyler. He's Josh. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.